Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to CEO show. I'm delighted to be joined by Yael from SolidBlock. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and your project.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Yael Tamar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SolidBlock, and we tokenize real estate. Quite simply, we move assets to the blockchain, and then these assets can now be treated, collateralized to secure loans, or put in indices and structured products. Just basically behave like, Web3, right? So put real estate on Web3.
So how many properties have you moved onto Web3 so far?
We've done about 5 projects, and the most exciting thing is that we really did the first project in the industry, which is called the Aspen Coin, which is backed by Aspen St. Regis Ski Resort. And that project is now trading on an alternative trading system called T0. The product itself is a security token because it represents a fractional ownership in an asset, hence the security. But we now also offering assets on the blockchain that are backed by basically other assets that are not securities. For example, the use of property or buying a condo. So there are a few things that you can do that later on can be treated in a more streamlined manner, right? As an NFT on an NFT marketplace or peer-to-peer, so uninhibited kind of by different compliance constrictions.
And so what do you see as the biggest challenge in getting people to buy property, move it onto the blockchain, and what's the hindrance? Why isn't everyone doing this already?
There's not a lot to buy yet, right? So we only tokenized a handful of projects and other companies in our space as well. The majority of the assets that were tokenized to date really were in the private equity space, so funds or companies. And this is a tool that's been used kind of by VCs and funds to be able to tokenize their balance sheet assets, sell them off to other stakeholders. And this is a major pain that even the funds have, right? To be able to transfer something tangible, right? When it's a digital asset, it's quite easy, right? And like now you have NFTs, so you can send somebody a digital asset easily. But if it's a real world asset that's written in some real world database, right? Their ownership. So real estate has the title, obviously, which is complex, and different countries have different rules, then you have products like companies, corporations, and you have obviously, every state has a way to record the companies that are in that state in the US, for example, right? So how can you digitize that stuff, right? So our specialty is really to be able to digitize real world assets, to put them on the blockchain.
And so how do you see this expanding as a market? So you've done a few projects. What do you think is going to be the thing that really makes this take off?
Wow. So I think the thing that's going to make this take off, it's kind of going mainstream like crypto did, is when everybody sees utility in it, right? So there is a group of people who are interested in the liquidity aspect. That's true. It will help some people to invest if they can take their assets out, right, or sell them when they need the money. So that's an obvious benefit. But people understand that when they invest in real estate, it might take some time. So liquidity is not an obvious kind of ask, right? So when you were riding horses all your life, like why would you even think of an automobile, right? You're so good at riding horses and so they just don't know that experience. So I don't know if this is enough of a value proposition for them. So what is enough of a value proposition for them? Well, how about you've invested in all of these products? Now, how about you leverage them? And how about they count as your assets, right? So you can go to a bank or another financing organization, you can leverage your house because it is yours. You can show, here's the title. You can leverage, I'll get financing for it, right? Now, in a digital world, in fact, it's much easier. Not because you only need to show the ownership of the wallet, but actually you can give somebody the right to lock it up, right? To put your asset kind of in a lien. But it's not, it just takes seconds to put that, blockchain type of a lien on an asset. Whereas in the real world, you have to really, do these difficult operations. And the new generation, I'm not even talking about Gen Z, but even like millennials are not buying apartments and houses just because it's so much hassle. Well, they can't afford them either, but that's another story.
And so effectively staking your real world property.
Yeah. And not only property, right? So now we're branching out to other real world asset categories, because everybody diversifies, right? Real estate is just one asset class. Crypto is just one asset class, although a lot of people that are listening to your podcast probably would disagree. And, and they would think diversification is kind of, having some Bitcoin, having some Ethereum, having some altcoins, having some NFTs. That's fantastic. But then there's also the whole world of stocks and bonds and, commodities and so on.
So beyond real estate, what do you think is the next physical asset class that to be put on the blockchain that people will think about then using staking?
So that would be anything that companies have on their balance sheet. So, and by the way, I read I was preparing for a talk, I think, and I had this interesting statistic that there are 47 public companies now that have invested so much in crypto that literally when you invest in them, you're investing in crypto effectively, right? Because they have obvious assets, which is their IP and their tech, but also they have a lot of crypto on their balance sheet, right? So they're kind of like a custodian. They're kind of like a crypto fund, if you think about it, right? Yeah. How amazing is that? So, okay, so when we look at institutions or even companies that put stuff on their balance sheet, that's usually, a lot of times that would be real estate, and that would also be commodities. And usually this comes in some sort of a digital format, of course. They're not stacking gold somewhere in a vault in a bank. They would really invest in funds. So I think the two main kind of assets is real estate and some sort of a trust or a fund that invests in a certain asset class. So I think this is pretty much the two, right? You can technically tokenize a regular commodity, and people have done it and successfully, right? So you can invest into their tokens, for example. But I think it's effectively going to be a real estate and then some sort of a accumulated fund that invests in a variety of things. Yeah.
But I mean, presumably you could tokenize your inventory, you could tokenize all of those elements, and then even machinery.
Absolutely. So I've seen a few times. Yes.
If you're able to buy a machine, if you're a capital-heavy company, then suddenly if you can tokenize it and stake it, then you can get return for your capital.
It's tricky. It's a little tricky with inventory and anything related to capital goods, and because they're clearly a depreciating asset that you would at some point just depreciate off your balance sheet. So that's kind of like a tool that the companies use, right? But that's a good inventory, by the way. Inventory is a good example, because I've seen quite a few use cases where you would tokenize your inventory and actually borrow money to deliver goods, because the payment conditions are usually what's called a plus 180 plus even 360, meaning you're only getting paid, you're providing a product now, but you're getting paid in a year, right? And you have to survive until then. So, and I've seen quite a few good solutions in this sphere, actually.
Interesting. So it's basically the real thing is finding appreciating assets to tokenize.
Yeah.
That's the
Yes.
trick in this.
Yes. If somebody here is kind of from a fintech space, then they would appreciate kind of the explosion of a sector called BNPL, buy now, pay later.
Yes.
And yes, right. So you go to a shopping cart, and all of a sudden you're offered a loan. So if you add tokenization to it, then the BNPL won't even have to charge so much, because obviously they charge you to take into account the risk of non-payment, right? If they're able to actually collateralize the asset at the time that they're selling something, right? So and again, this would have to be an asset like a car or real estate or machinery. Imagine a company goes to buy new equipment, and they're offered, there's this offer, right, on the website. You want to buy a printer, buy now, pay later, but we'll collateralize, like an industrial printer, right? We'll collateralize it, and we'll take ownership of it if you don't pay us back, right? This, I'm pretty sure that's the next step in this industry.
Presumably, you could also do the same with digital subscriptions, because you're going to know the drop-off rate, and if you have a 3-year cycle, if you have enough customers in place, right, then you could actually tokenize and stake that future revenue from your digital revenue.
Wow, that's a great value proposition. I haven't thought of, because quite a few service providers to startups rely on that. It's kind of like as a deferred payment or something like that. So that could be good. Because you're right, you don't have to tokenize the asset. You can tokenize just the future revenue streams. We just have to understand the mechanism, the legal mechanism to do that, right? And it's and I think appropriate mechanism here would be IP tokenization, not company tokenization, but the product and the IP. And there are legal vehicles that are done through licensing, right? That we can actually, that license fees and stuff like that, right? So, this will require some thought process, but it could be very, very interesting.
Interesting. So what are you working on? What are you working on next? And what communities are you excited about that you see doing great stuff in those areas that you're moving forward through?
We're working on so many interesting things. I will kind of highlight a few. I can't say too much yet because we have a few announcements coming up that I'm excited about. But I think the main area of our operation right now is enabling customers, which are corporate, institutional, and also individual, to be able, like you said, to stake your real estate and be able to earn something or to borrow against it. I guess earning something that would be dividends and stuff like that, right? So to be able to borrow, and then another really cool application is indices and structured products, because eventually that's what will enable the aggregation, will improve liquidity. Because if you're trading a bigger asset now, then you'll be able to see a lot more liquidity, right? Because more institutional investors will come in with larger amounts and stuff like that, right? You'll see a lot more movement. So I think that the industry has finally realized that, and that's exciting. And the final, I think I can talk about our newest token offering that we're launching, and it's called Solid Token, and it's a tool for fractional underwriting of private assets. So private asset offerings. So the revolution here is that up until now, there was no underwriting of private asset offerings, right? Basically, or in the extreme case, there might be, but that basically would be one private underwriter, and they would take the whole deal, right? So, but what we want to establish in the market is kind of like a security and peace of mind of the investors when they go and they look at an asset and they don't know necessarily if it's good or bad. They don't have the capability to do proper due diligence. But if they know that larger investors went and they looked and they actually said, we're taking the financial risk for this. If this offering doesn't generate enough, then we're going to cover it. So this project is going to go on. So that gives me as an investor a lot more confidence, especially when it comes to startups, right? Real estate, absolutely. But in real estate, there are many, ways to appraise and look at the benchmark. But, in the startup world, when I see a lot, when they come to me for investment, who am I to judge? But I'm excited about what they're doing and I want to invest. But, talk about the many ICOs that were invested in and then flopped, right? So then we're going to use this proof of stake authority mechanism to establish who will get to underwrite, like professional investors, how much they'll get to underwrite. So the solid token mechanism is really to enable underwriters to bid on the assets, to establish the price, and so on. And the more solid token they have, the better benefits they have, the more fees they're going to get. So there is an incentive for people to basically keep their tokens and to keep buying more, right? So that kind of creating an upward movement in the price of the token. So that's the mechanism, and we're very, very excited about it because I think it's going to basically propel many, many industries into Web3, right? So that's what we want, right? We want everybody to be in the crypto, right? And crypto, blockchain, and Web3. It's evangelism, right?
And so how do people find this token? Is it going to your Discord? Is it where are they gonna engage with this community?
That's a great question. So we're gonna launch. We're preparing Discord, and we're gonna launch it in a couple of days. But for now, go to solidblock.co and sign up for our mailing list. Or contact us, and we'll contact you back, and we'll let you know. Actually, in the beginning, it will be a very limited pre-sale, and which will mainly go towards top 10 underwriters, so larger investors and funds, and then it will open up to individual investors later on. But actually, we are able to take on individual investors even during that limited pre-sale if they come in partnership with a potential underwriter, right? So if if you're associated with a fund, or if you're an LP or a GP in a fund that will work with us, then we'll let you invest.
That's awesome. How do people connect with you if they want to do that?
Anywhere. I'm everywhere. I'm Yael Tamar on Twitter. I'm actually notorious for not answering messages. So how do you actually get my attention is LinkedIn is probably the best because that I will answer that. Email yael@solidblock.co. Telegram, which I never see the messages because it's just as crappy UI, but also at Yael Tamar. And what else? Just come and visit me in Tel Aviv. I hang out around the Central Park area. And go for a run, and you can see me. And you're laughing now, but people do come up to me all the time. So awesome. In different places, I know it's surprising to me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Murray.
I'm Murray Newlands, your host of the How to CEO show. I'll see you next time.